All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you. I've never been so happy. Estoy contento, as we say in Puerto Rico. Hey, ¿dónde están mis puertorriqueños? Bienvenido a todos. Yes, I am excited. I love my Puerto Ricans. Where are my Puerto Ricans? Shout out to my Puerto Ricans. I am...
Do you know that my friend Nikki is Puerto Rican?
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I did not know that. Yeah. Do you speak a little Spanish? The little Espanol? Can you want to lay a little something on us?
Un poquito.
Un poquito. Very good. Yeah, that was very good.
What?
Me llamo Mark Thompson.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I'm, you look, Kim looks like she's got a little extra loose under her face today.
I have lighting issues in here today.
I like it, baby. I think you look hot. Yeah.
It looks like Halloween, like I've got the light under my chin.
We all just need better lighting. Am I right, people?
Kim, how are you?
You know I'm right. We're all handsome and beautiful in our own way. Just need a little better lighting.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. Let's get it on, everyone. It is one of those days, the long-awaited release of Steve Bannon has happened. He's going to have a formal address, apparently, meaning I think he's scheduled a press conference. It may happen during our show. If it does, we'll, of course, give you highlights. I focus on Steve Bannon because he is the head of the spear when it comes to whipping up the MAGA faithful. Now, he is being replaced and augmented by the new MAGA people. I'll just mention probably, I would say, the number one MAGA replacement for Bannon is the soft, fuzzy MAGA diehard, and that's J.D. Vance. So Vance waits in the wings. That's the whole idea of putting Vance in the White House, is that when Trump takes the White House, is the thinking that Vance will really do the heavy lifting when it comes to getting the MAGA agenda out while Trump plays golf, etc. You've even heard more elaborate schemes than that, which are associated with him. They're going to remove Trump, they're going to 25th Amendment, and it's going to be J.D. Vance. And I've heard all that crap from the right. Those are the right-wing conspiracies. But if none of those conspiracies come to pass, which is probably more likely, it's J.D. Vance in waiting. But anyway, Bannon arrives in time for the last week dash to the polls. And so Bannon, through his, is it called War Room? Is that what his podcast is called? He essentially whips up that MAGA base, and he does a really good job of it. You know, you can say what you want about Steve Bannon, and we have said what we wanted about Steve Bannon. He's a despicable guy. He has an agenda for government here that he's had for government overseas, as he's worked with wannabe dictators and current dictators. I'm thinking of Orban specifically in Hungary. But the thing about Bannon is he wants to dismantle and has a plan to dismantle the American government, the administrative state, as he calls it, right? So that is the regulatory arm of government. It is the protectionist arm of government. And that's his podcast, Bannon's War Room podcast.
Yeah, it looks like he just posted something 14 minutes ago if you want me to listen through it.
Yeah, if you want to listen for a minute or two, maybe there's something we can lift. That would be great.
So, apparently one of the things he's saying is that Trump is going to need a friendly house, that it could be a nightmare if Trump wins the presidency, but there's not a Republican house. He says we have to take the house, is what he said.
This is the plan that Donald Trump was hinting at when he talked about we have a secret plan. Did I send you that video, Tony? Maybe Tony's off now listening to Bannon. Sorry.
Well, here's what else.
I sent you I sent you the secret plan thing at the rally, at the huge MAGA rally at Madison Square Garden. In between the racism and the the sexism and the hate, the screaming at Hillary Clinton, at the libs, in addition to throwing those fireballs, when Trump got up, he said, "We have a secret plan with the House." And he was looking, I thought he was looking at Mike Johnson. I didn't know, or referring to him. Did I send you anything on that? No? Anyway, so this
It was
is...
a freaky moment because you think, what the hell is he talking about? Like,
Yeah,
what
he
else
said, it's a
does he have up
secret
his
we're not
sleeve?
going to talk about it. When Johnson was asked about it, he said, secrets you don't talk about. But it's not really that big a secret. And we're going to ask David Cay Johnston about this plan. And the plan essentially, and it's been written about and articulated in articles, in opinion pages. If you can, and we've talked about it here, I've come to think of it, we've talked about it pretty frequently. If you throw enough sand in the gears of the election process, you prevent, and for example, I'll just give you like one bit of sand you could throw into the gears is what they've talked about. We're not going to certify the results in any number of counties. Maybe they're rural counties, maybe they're outlying counties, maybe they're significant counties, maybe there are a lot of voters there, but whatever it might be, this constellation of counties where you have MAGA diehards now in control, election deniers now in control, they're going to not certify the vote. All right? So the idea is we're not going to certify, and because we're not certifying, neither candidate perhaps, it's most effective in a Kamala win, of course, will get to 270 because you simply just don't have the precincts reporting in with the certifications required to get the vote to 270, the Electoral College.
You know how it seems like they always accuse of something that they're planning to do? Like if they point the
Projection,
finger,
that's
it's
what
because,
they do, right.
So I guess today Bannon, and this goes to what you're talking about, he questioned Jamie Raskin labeling Trump an insurrectionist and said that could escalate into the Democratic efforts to block the certification of a potential Trump victory. This is what Bannon says. So what you're saying,
Right.
you just said it, and then he comes out and he does this, projection, and it makes me think this is the way they're going.
Yes, it's clearly the plan. And the idea then, just to carry it through, and then I'll double back and just underscore what Kim's just said and what the plan is. But, okay, with neither candidate able to reach 270 for reasons associated with the lack of certification, you now throw the election into the House of Representatives. And again, we've spoken of this before. It ends up in the House of Representatives where you think, well, that's okay. We have all of those Democratic voters who are legislators in the House of Representatives, or House members, Congress people, if you want to think of it that way. And that's not how it works. It works one vote per state. And if you just tally up the states, there are more red states than blue states, and Trump wins. So that's the plan that is increasingly spoken of out loud. We've been talking about it literally for years now, since Trump decided to run again. We mention it occasionally, but we have detailed it before. The idea, though, is you'll do it to stave off a Harris victory. So if Harris actually comes through with a big swing state like Pennsylvania, with all those Puerto Ricans who live in Pennsylvania, if they're legit offended by what was going down at that MAGA event, you really might have her on the route to 270. And then it has to be handled in some sort of aggressively, almost politically terroristic way, which is precisely what Bannon and his friends have there to actually make it happen. I say that I'm halting about it because I'm thinking about what they've done is strategically put in MAGA loyalists in certification positions across the country. So it's not always the Secretary of State that certifies the votes. At various municipalities, at various in various districts, in various areas, you have certification being done by lesser election officials. And then that is then bumped up for certification of the state's ballots by the Secretary of State. So in the case, for example, of Georgia, which we all know very well. So this is the plan to somehow throw it to the House. I'll talk to David Cay Johnston about that. But I'll tell you what really could divert that plan. If, as is also spoken of, Kamala Harris could, in a way that's not being measured in the polls, post a decisive victory, it would be very hard to pull this off. It really would. Now, Trump is talking, and this is kind of what Kim's talking about. This is the, he's really mirroring the rap of the left when he says, we need it too big to rig. He knows that he's the one who's rigging, right? The left isn't rigging elections, man. They're just not. It's just not their jam. It's not their brand. The brand of the right is protest, get angry, do everything you can to prevent their legitimacy when it comes to voting, and, scream, yell, and even, as we saw on January 6th, engineer a coup. That's what the right does. That's what MAGA does. I mean, I'm sorry. If you talked to me in 1975, I wouldn't say that. This is what the party has become. It's evolved to that place. So all you MAGA people, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm telling you, just look at what you guys have become. Look at your rally over the weekend. That wasn't a campaign rally.
No.
That was they did it. It was like a cavalcade of people coming on stage, one after the other. You had an insult comic. You had a bunch of people I'd never heard of. You just had these flame-throwing a-holes calling Hillary Clinton. All these. You saw what, what's his name? Hinchcliffe?
Yeah.
Is it Tony? Tony Hinchcliffe?
Yeah.
So, look, this guy, Tony Hinchcliffe, his whole thing is he has an insult comic, insult show. It's a roast, okay?
He's
So people.
funny. Who is it that we know? Who's our comedian? Is it Bobby Slayton?
Yeah.
Who's like, he can offend anyone, but
Right.
it's super offensive, and you have a hard time not laughing because he's funny. I mean, it's
but
funny.
let me just take I don't know, Tony Hinchcliffe, his show. I don't watch it, but I think it's very popular. He must be funny. He's not political. He's funny. I've seen some of it because it's a kind of a show where you go on and almost it's a challenge as to who can out insult the other, who can out roast the other. But my point more to whether or not you think he's funny is you know what you're going to get with him. He's a roast comic. He's coming on to roast somebody. It's not going to be Trump. So he's roasting the right. There it is. Kill Tony. That's his podcast. So
2 million subs. So
yeah, 2 million subscribers. So he is.
Wow.
I mean, he may not be our flavor or your flavor, but he's the new flavor. Okay, which is much nastier, edgier, filled with racist. But that's kind of what the old school roast was. I mean, the Friars Club roast were that. They were no holds barred. It was a lot of sexual stuff. It was a lot of race stuff, a lot of religion stuff, anti-Semitic stuff. I mean, that's really what they used to do. And that's why they were never televised. I'm talking about the Friars roasts. So it's now evolved to this other place. Anyway, back to the rally. I mean, the rally is really, I thought, essentially MAGA. That's what MAGA is. In a way, Trump was tame compared to the rest of the rally. By the time Trump came on, they'd already insulted and destroyed any sense of temperance that there might have been. Now, that's where MAGA is now, and that's their plan with Steve Bannon on the election. It will involve the House of Representatives. If the Democrats win the House, and I would say now, there is the likelihood that the Democrats will win the House and the Senate will go to the Republicans. If that happens, the House is the only thing that's critical in this scenario by which essentially you yank the election one way or the other. You really wouldn't have a lot of wiggle room as a GOP strategist trying to pull this plan off. So win the House is the word. Yeah, win the House, and Democrats, you won't have to worry about the whole bizarre plan where it's one state, one vote. That's the word on Steve Bannon and the MAGA crew that need the House to pull off their ultimate jam, unless they win the election, which is possible too. And then they don't need to try any shenanigans. They can win it fair and square, the old school way. That's not really what they like to do. It's not the coin of the realm for the GOP. Murphy Rowan says, good morning. Sounds like we're off to a spicy start. Happy birthday to me. I'm 55 today. Wow. My birthday wish is that no one says I just need to know more about Harris.
Girl, you just woo.
I just don't know if she's qualified.
Vote blue for right, says Murphy Rowan. Murphy is a huge supporter of this show from the very beginning. We started as a radio show in San Francisco, and Murphy was there. And wow, $50, $49.99 for a 55 on your birthday.
Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Murphy. Happy birthday.
Love it. 55, that's a great age, right?
Yeah.
You got the wisdom of years, but the encumbrance of years, the nastiness of all the physical crap that's waiting for you on down the line. It hasn't hit yet. Yeah, you've got 10 years of open road, baby, before you have to worry about anything. Good for you. $18 for my daughter's 18th birthday today. She's going to vote in person for her rights.
Yes.
Janet R. Big shout out. That is really cool. That's right.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
18 years old.
Yeah.
Love that. Janet R. is another one who's been with us since the very beginning, and since coming over here to our YouTube platform and our podcast platforms. Thank you to Janet and Murphy. Peter Newton with a $10 super chat. Sorry to skip yesterday, but I needed a break to bask in the joy of Sunday's Hail Maryland. Yes, been a long time for Washington NFL fans. That's right. I sent it to you, Tony, didn't I? There was the most amazing Hail Mary. I can't run it because I'll be demonetized. But in the Washington, what do they call it? A Commanders game. Mm-hmm. The game seemed over. The Bears seemed to have beaten them. And then that's why they call it a Hail Mary, a last sort of throw up the ball and pray play. This is what I sent. Okay, so the ball is tipped and the Commanders player ends up catching it in the end zone. So it's incredible. The call's incredible. No one can believe it. We've all watched it a bunch of times. It's amazing. It really was maybe one of the greatest plays in the history of the game type thing. But the fun thing was Sharks win, says Brian. Thank you for that. $50. What a comeback. I'll go back to that. Brian, thank you for that. I don't want to diminish it. It's just that right now I'm in the middle of another thought. So thank you, Brian VO. I sent to Tony the Japanese call. This is on the Japanese broadcast of that NFL game. This is the Japanese call. Again, the Bears are winning 15-12 against the Washington Commanders. This is the last play of the game. Here's the Japanese broadcast. And can I play it, Tony? Well, I'll be okay, won't I?
I don't know. I don't know how this one will turn out for us. Honestly, we might have to cut this
out after the show.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this one might hit us because it's NFL. But here, I can just let it go just for like.
Is it worth it? Let's do it.
It's pretty great. I think it's pretty great, but I don't know.
I'll do 3 seconds. I think we give away 5 seconds. Let's see. We'll find out. Let's push the limits today.
Here we go. Let's run it. Here we go. Okay, that was good. Thank you. We might still get demonetized. So thank you for all your support, everyone, because we may make no money on the show today. Now, Brian VO, Sharks win. What a comeback. Congratulations to the San Jose Sharks. Wow. Brian, thank you for a $50 super chat. And tomorrow, it is the, thank you, Tawada, for this, by the way. It is the commissioner tomorrow, and he will have comments, I'm sure, on that Sharks comeback. Calvin Wong says 5150. How about it with a 5150 contribution?
Really
The great
nice.
Republican Einsteins don't even understand the definition of SOB when they call Hillary an SOB. Proof of idiocy. It was awkward when that guy called her an SOB. That is true, Calvin. Calvin Wong, our shadow producer of this show. But Trevor Starr is, Terry Garr passed away? I didn't know this. I get all my bad Hollywood news from Trevor Starr in Hollywood.
Trevor, she did pass away, as a matter of fact. I've got some pictures of her that we can show later in the show, but she was 79 years old.
She was been sick for a long time.
Yeah. She had multiple sclerosis.
Yeah, I did a few things with her, like radio play type stuff, performance type stuff with her, and I just felt bad. She was really struggling. Yeah. So she was the it girl for a while, you know.
She was really funny and personable.
Oh, terrific.
That's how she came across on screen anyway.
Yeah. Mark, talk about your Las Vegas vacation. We need a little break from the intensity of politics. Just a wee bit, please. Where did you go? What did you do? Did you win, lose, see shows, food? Talk to us. Well, it's not like me to want to talk about myself like that. I mean,
Do you know who I am?
Not a real,
Kind of a big deal.
bit awkward for me, maybe, but I'm all right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I did roll into Las Vegas. I'll tell you this quickly, and then I want to get to the Puerto Ricanos, mis hermanos, my brothers, mis hermanas, the sisters. I like to roll the R's, como los Latinos. Here's to Mark going against the NFL. I will probably get my $5 back, Jim Slayton says. What we did was we went to Las Vegas. We had never been to the Sphere. You know, they had that new Sphere thing, which is pretty cool. So we bought tickets. So this wasn't one of the shows. I really would love to see a concert, rock or otherwise. I mean, R&B or whatever concert there. But we saw the movie done by Darren Aronofsky. And it was pretty good. So that was the only real agenda item we had, aside from seeing, there's the Sphere in Las Vegas. So after that, it was, the reality is that there's not a lot of gambling unless it's me, because Cordy doesn't gamble, so I'm the one who's the gambler. And I won on day one. I won a pretty healthy amount. And then day two came along, and and it all evaporated. So in the end, I ended up losing. I don't really have any great gaming stories. The poker, I shouldn't say this, but I will tell you this. I never play poker like if I'm really drunk or buzzed. But you're in Las Vegas and you kind of lose track of things. And so I was buzzed and playing poker, and I felt great. I was very laid back. It was really cool. And then I lost. And then I thought, you know what? You're not doing that again. You've got to be completely clear-headed when you're. So I'm blaming the buzz.
Where are my weed smokers at?
I'm blaming the buzz for my loss. But
my grandpa used to say, you don't gamble, like really gamble, unless it's getaway day.
Oh, I see.
You don't gamble on day one. Whatever day you're leaving, that's the day you gamble, so that when if you're gambling right before you got to walk out, you walk out with a pocket full of cash.
Oh, that's a way to think of it. I don't know. Yeah. On the first day, everybody was going to sleep, and I just thought, I got to get something in action, and that's when I won. I have a good history on day one of winning, and I have a weak, bad, depressing history of losing on day 2 or 3. So there you have it.
Yeah.
But that's about all I can tell you. It's Las Vegas equals loser veritas, exactly. Thank you, Cameo. Anyway, thank you for
The
the
Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you for the interest. I wish I had a better Vegas story.
Back in the day, my grandpa used to have me placing bets for him on the horse races. That was in the the 80s and early 90s, where
Sure.
you could send a kid up to the sports book and have him place the bets for you. Then I'd come running back with my little papers. 2 to win, 2 to place, 2 to show, Grandpa, right?
That's hilarious. That's really great. That's really great. Well, they still have that, but they're much stricter. I'll tell you what they got looser on, which is just amazing. When I started going to Las Vegas many years ago, you could not even raise a camera up in the casino without people jumping on you and saying, "No pictures, sir, no pictures."
Wow.
You can't, no photos of any sort. And I'd always heard that it was because they're guys who are like having affairs and they're there with their girlfriends. They don't want their wife to see. That was the only explanation that I thought, oh, okay, I can understand that.
For cheating reasons.
Well, maybe it's the cheating.
I mean, like
maybe it's the
legit
cheating.
cheating, gambling cheating, not cheating on your wife cheating.
Yeah, no, I get it. Right. So I don't know, but
Cheaters all
now it's like taking pictures is fine. You're not allowed to have the camera, I think, on the table. Like I'm sure that's for cheating reasons, as you say, but or around the like in the case of blackjack or baccarat, but or the craps game. But it is perfectly acceptable to take pictures in the casino, which is something that was not only frowned upon, it was verboten for years. So there's that. All right, let me quickly get to this story that
The Mark Thompson Show.
this is an emerging story, and here's why this is a big deal. This Puerto Rican deal, the kind of ripple effects of having insulted the Puerto Rican community from the MAGA event at Madison Square Garden, you may say, come on, guys, let's get, whatever, he's an insult comic. He was vetted by the MAGA people, by the Trump people, and his speech was even reviewed by the MAGA people, by the Trump people. In fact, they excised a word. He was doing a joke of some kind about Hillary Clinton, and he called her the C word, and they eliminated it. But the rest of what Tony Hinchcliffe said was in that prompter. Now, as I've already said on the show, he's wildly popular. That's his brand of humor. You had to know you were getting that when you booked him. It was just maybe the wrong place for him to do his thing. But be that as it may, the idea somehow, because now there's this sort of, now the guy's got 10-foot pole marks all over him, right? I don't know him. I had no idea. I didn't know he was on the bill. Trump is saying I didn't know him. All the MAGA people are saying I didn't know. Even the event planners are saying, we never really were aware of those remarks. Anyway, it's significant because it's what we're still talking about in this last week of the election. We're talking about the insulting of a critical community. Over 400,000 voters live in Pennsylvania, a critical swing state. So for that reason, this thing, which might have, had it taken place 4 months ago, been just a big meh, it takes on added significance. So Trump's Sunday hate rally in the MSG offended, in the Madison Square Garden, offended Puerto Ricans, says Rich. Welcome to the club, amigos. He's been offending Mexicans, Muslim, and Haitians since day one. Yeah, there is some truth to that.
I've never seen anything like it.
Let's do a little bit of the wrap package on Puerto Ricans in New York. They make up a large chunk of New York City. Go ahead, that community of Puerto Ricans. Here's the response.
The joke bombed, but the explosive fallout reverberated across the country to the 5 million plus stateside Puerto Ricans, many of them registered voters, and more than 3 million American citizens on the island.
Convicted Trump didn't say the words that were said at his rally, but it doesn't matter because it was his rally.
Donald Trump has got to go! Hey, hey! Oh!
This afternoon in East Harlem, a who's who of Puerto Rican federal, state, and city leaders held a news conference to condemn the comments uttered Sunday night, comments made at a rally designed to gain supporters in a tight presidential election, comments that could backfire in a key battleground state.
So, you know, he made a calculated error yesterday. Basically, he said goodbye to PA, to Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, we have 450,000 Puerto Ricans.
This is about human rights, civil rights, and this is about my people, my mother, my grandmother who died after Maria. This is about our people who have suffered for way too long.
He has shown us time and time again that he doesn't value us, that he doesn't value our vote, that he doesn't respect us as people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously they're probably members of the Puerto Rican community who goes, it's no big deal. But it would seem to me that pretty much en masse, they're not happy. And I don't blame them. The Archbishop of San Juan, Puerto Rico, called Monday for former President Trump to personally apologize for this series of racist remarks made by the comedian at his campaign rally in New York City. We would have provided a number of options for Donald Trump to apologize. And as you know, apologies are in the DNA of this show. We have many different sorts of apology. You can go with the non-apology, which is sort of along the lines of, you know, I said a lot of stuff and clearly people took it the wrong way. Like, that's a non-apology. Like, you're not really apologizing for what you're saying. You're saying it didn't land for you who don't understand it.
My words upset so many people.
That's it. Exactly right. Whoopi has got it. My words upset so many people. But the Archbishop, the Puerto Rican Archbishop, he wants a direct apology. You know, he wants
my bad, I'm sorry.
No, he wants more than my bad, I'm sorry.
Have you ever heard Trump apologize?
No. I make a respectful call to clarify that these comments do not reflect in any way your personal or political views, he said, in asking Trump to apologize. The Archbishop of Puerto Rico. Wow. Well, you know, it's
Morning.
I really think it's a problem for the Trump campaign just because, as I say, we're still talking about it 2 days later.
Yeah,
and it's a hot piece of political football. I mean, the football is hot, if that's possible. It will continue to float through the body politic.
When they're saying, though, how close Pennsylvania is and how every single vote matters, maybe offending a giant swath of the people living in Pennsylvania might not be the best move.
Yeah. This is the situation with Pennsylvania and that chunk of electorate that Kim was talking about. Go ahead, Tony, roll that, please.
It's really close in Pennsylvania. Okay, there are around 600,000 by some counts, 600,000 Latino voters, I'll put an L right there, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Around, by some counts, 300,000 Puerto Rican voters in the state of Pennsylvania, the third highest Puerto Rican population in the entire country. You will notice one thing about these two numbers here. They're both way bigger than the margin in Pennsylvania the last two elections. They are a key voting bloc in the Commonwealth. And it's not just the numbers, it's where they are in the Commonwealth. Let's focus in here. Now, the darker the shade, the greater the population. And there are a few places that are pushing 30, 40, 50% Hispanic population. I'm going to circle them right here around these three counties and these two counties here. And if I take out this filter and go back to the main map, what you can see is that 4 years ago, Joe Biden won 3 of these counties. Donald Trump really won 2. And they're some of the swingiest in this swing Commonwealth. Let's just push in. Everyone knows Joe Biden, of course, is from Scranton, Lackawanna County. He got 53% there. It's really tight. Nearby Wilkes-Barre, Luzerne County. Donald Trump won that. But again, 56 to 42, pretty tight there. You go a little bit south here. Reading is Berks County. Donald Trump, 53%. Again, very close. Maybe the most telling is Lehigh County. That's where Allentown is. People know the Billy Joel song from Allentown. But Lehigh County's had huge demographic shifts over the years, has nearly a 50% Hispanic population. And you can see Joe Biden won 53% of the vote there, 98,000 votes. He was able to get 17,000 votes more than Hillary Clinton did. This is often seen, Lehigh County, as one of the most important swing counties in the entire country. huge Puerto Rican population, Kate. You can understand why Republicans are nervous about this campaign. Kamala Harris was in Pennsylvania talking to Puerto Rican voters while they were being made, Kate.
Exactly.
So there you go. That, I
illustration.
think, is a great illustration of why this is important. Again, I go back to point one, which is they're talking about something negative from your rally days after your rally has concluded. And then I go to what was actually said. It directly affects, potentially, a huge block of voters in a critical swing state. There's no way you can do that arithmetic and not realize, wow, this is bad for Trump and MAGA land. Fascinating, I think. We have another video on that. Do we have?
Well,
let me go to AOC. I like that.
She
video.
was on a bunch of talk shows yesterday talking about what this meant to her. Yeah.
Here's AOC.
You mentioned this was a hate rally. This was not just a presidential rally. This was also not just a campaign rally. I think it's very important for people to understand that these are mini January 6th rallies. These are mini Stop the Steal rallies. These are rallies to prime an electorate into rejecting the results of an election if it doesn't go the way that they want. Because Donald Trump and that entire cadre of people up on that stage, Stephen Miller, et cetera, do not respect the law of the United States of America. And they either want to win this election or they are using rhetoric of taking it by force. That is what they mean, and that's what they're doing when they are inciting violence and hatred against Latinos, against Black Americans, against Americans who don't have children, you have J.D. Vance literally talking about watering down people's right to vote depending on if they can viably carry a child or not. We have to understand how unhinged this campaign has gotten, and the only reason that the rhetoric has gotten this far is precisely because they are trying to prime the kind of froth that led up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And so it's very important that we connect those dots. And right now the campaign is scrambling and they're trying to blame this rhetoric on a so-called comedian. This is not a comedian. This is the Trump campaign. They invited this rhetoric on their stage for a reason. It was a chorus of speakers on that campaign for a reason. It was vetted, and they knew exactly who was going to say what before they went on. And so the only backtracking that they're doing right now is just because tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans happen to live in Philadelphia, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, and also the several swing seats in the House of Representatives that run through the state of New York. And they're just realizing that they might have made a big error by saying out loud what they're thinking.
That, by the way, is a great run. You can say what you want about AOC, and I see many of you have. You've said, she's, outlived her usefulness. She's not for the Democrats. She's not a good spokesperson anymore. She stated it, I thought, pretty well. I mean, certainly, she certainly stuck the landing, which is, you guys just realized, you can sit there and get with your reckless rhetoric. And then she even detailed a little bit of what that reckless rhetoric is. But there are effects. And all of a sudden it's like, we just effed up big time because we insulted a key part of the electorate that, of course, we don't care about. And we view them because they're Latino or because they're a minority or because they're an immigration-related group. We view them in a way in which we view America, which is that they don't have a place at the table. But we don't want to insult them a week before election because we need them to get elected. After we're elected, then we can flush them, which is exactly what the plan is. And that's what AOC called out, and she's right. They stepped in it from a political standpoint. Leave aside the morality and the horror of the way they paint the Puerto Rican community and the Latino community and et cetera. But just from the standpoint of pure hard-knuckled politics, they've screwed up big time. I'm unable to sort of see the chat while I was speaking, so I don't know. But if you're just joining us, what's that, Kim?
A lot of support for AOC.
Yeah. This Mars said Mars is kind of a bit of a provocateur. I would support AOC's views if she actually got her bills passed and got support from her party, but she doesn't. She's a mouthpiece, and that's all. Well, I'd say two things about that. First of all, you mean as opposed to what? Who do you have in the Republican side? Everybody? They haven't passed a bill at all. Okay, I mean they don't pass them. They're all there just burnishing their images, right? They're building their brand. Look at your Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. I mean, I can go on and on. Mike Johnson. I mean, he doesn't do anything. He runs the House. Don't tell me about AOC and she doesn't get bills passed. That's such a lame-ass comment, Mars. I'm sorry. And you know I love you, Mars. I love you like no other man can love another man. But I think you're full of it here. It's just a bad bust, pal. To everyone throwing out the word Nazi, well, Mal Mars with a $5 super chat, so I'll read this. To everyone throwing out the word Nazi for attendees and the rally, why is it Nazi, he says. Quit the damn fear-mongering. Conflating Nazi rhetoric is so weak. Well, now that I have just insulted his last comment, let me also now agree in part with Mars. I know. I know. But I believe we do throw around the Nazi thing a little much. Now, let me say something in fairness to the people who talked about that rally and compared it to the Nazi rally that was held at Madison Square Garden back in the 30s. There is such an analog. They are so comparable that I understand why the word Nazi was used. So to be fair, I think on this one, Mars, I'm with the people who reflexively compare it, but I'm also with you because, and this is my only point on throwing around Hitler, throwing around Nazi, I just think we throw it around too much. And I believe that just because they threw a MAGA rally at Madison Square Garden doesn't make it Nazi. I, however, feel that the level of hate rhetoric did really rise to the Nazi comparison. When you talk about America is for Americans, I mean, that's what Stephen Miller said, pal. Mm-hmm. He said, America is for Americans. He was a chief architect of Trump's immigration strategy. You had, and that was the politest thing said. I think in a way, if it's not Nazi, it's pre-Nazi. Okay, it's Nazi adjacent. But I agree with Mars's general point, which is we throw around these comments a little too much. And there was a big meltdown on a talk show over the weekend with Mehdi Hasan. He called somebody a Nazi. Then they made some, I thought, ill-tempered, stupid comment about when he said, "And I'm with the Palestinians," and the guy said, "Well, I hope you don't have a pager or whatever." And he goes, "Are you talking about you're asking for my death? Is that what you just called for me to die?" And Mehdi Hasan, it's all performance, man. It's all Mehdi Hasan. I lost so much respect for him after that exchange. I thought it was just, I thought it was theater in a way. Anyway, those are a few comments, and that's my thought. I know we have that. I'm just looking to see if we can run it.
We have time if you want it.
We have time. You want to run a little bit of that? This is, but this is the reason we're running this in part is because this is where the American political dialogue is now. It lives in these talk shows that catch a virality because one guy says, "You can't talk to me that way," and then you end up with this kind of rugby scrum of rhetoric. Go ahead, Tony, run a little bit of it. This is from
if you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing it.
Stop. Let me just, we picked it up. Stop for a second. He said, if you don't want to be called Nazis, then stop talking like Nazis. Isn't that what he said? Kim, isn't that what the comment was?
I think that's what he said.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay, go ahead, Tony. Now I'll shut up. Go ahead.
If you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing.
You're called
stop
an
saying-
You've been called an anti-Semite more than anyone else at this table.
Yeah.
And people will sit there and, no, by me. I never called you an anti-Semite. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I don't.
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, so I'm used to it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
well, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is
Did
that
you just say I should die?
You
should not.
No, I
Did
said,
you just say
no,
I should be killed?
No, I did not say that. I said, no, I did not say that.
Hold on.
Did your guest just say I
No, I
should be
didn't.
killed?
Hold on.
On live TV.
So stop right now because it's going to get crazy. He didn't say, I just hope you get killed. He didn't say that.
He said, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. And didn't the Israelis set off a bunch of beepers to blow people up?
I get what he was referencing, but he took this to a different place. By the way, I'm not on the guys. I thought it was a stupid thing to say.
So
It's a stupid thing to say.
Is he accusing of being a Hamas terrorist?
He's saying, as a Hassan was saying, as a Palestinian supporter, I'm used to this being called names, anti-Semitic, etc. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when he said so as a supporter, I'm used to it, and he says, well, I just hope your pager doesn't go off. Is that what he said?
Mm-hmm. I hope your beeper doesn't go off.
Your beeper doesn't go off. So I'm sort of in this place where I go, okay, that guy really shouldn't have said that. But Hassan then goes, did you hear that? Did you hear that? He was asking for my, I mean, it's classic. It's like what you see on Piers Morgan all the time. And now it's like, you're offended. No, I'm offended worse than you are. I take your offendedness and I go over the top and I raise you my offendedness. And it was successful here. Take a look.
Semite. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I don't.
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, so I'm used to it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
well, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is
Did
that
you just say I should die?
You should not.
No.
Did you just say I should die?
No, I did not say that. I said, no, I did not say that.
Hold on.
Did your guest just say I should be killed? On live TV.
I said I hope
Guys,
you don't.
let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
Because you said I'm a big supporter
of the Palestinians.
of Hamas.
Guys, let
I
me
said
stop.
Palestinians.
Are you a supporter
Am I
of
what?
Hamas?
No, of course I'm not.
Palestinians are not.
I apologize.
Are you a
Then I
racist,
apologize.
violent person
Then I
inciting
apologize.
violence against me?
Ryan,
That's disgusting.
that is completely.
Then I apologize.
Good
that
job,
is
CNN.
completely
Let's have first
out
block
of
say the
pocket.
Muslim guy
You
should
know
be
that.
blown
Then I
up
apologize.
on
Then I
TV.
apologize.
Don't
Then I
say
apologize.
then I
Wow.
apologize. You literally.
I thought you said
accused
Hamas.
him.
I
You didn't think I said
No,
Hamas.
no,
I
you
said
didn't.
I supported
Yes, I did.
Palestinian
Yes, I
rights.
did.
Why? Because when you hear
What's funny is
Palestinian,
Rudy
you hear Hamas.
Giuliani said this
No,
yesterday,
because-
so you're a great guest to
Listen.
be here
All
to
right,
defend
I
Rudy
told
Giuliani's
myself
I
racism.
wasn't going to
Give me
entertain
one
nonsense
second.
today, and so at this point,
This is what we're in
I
now.
can't
This
do
is America in
Here's what
2024.
I will say.
Forget the
Here's what I-
racism.
That's
It's
right.
I should
That's
die.
right.
I didn't say that. You
You
should
said,
die.
what does beeper mean? Don't give me your
I
faint
did not say
ignorance.
you should
Guys,
die.
Why did you say
guys,
with my
give me-
beeper
give me
go
a-
off?
What did you mean?
What did you mean by the beeper?
So what
I
did
said-
you mean?
What did you
No,
mean by
no,
the
no,
beeper?
no, 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 no,
No, you didn't. You said, I hope your beeper doesn't go off.
Ryan, stop talking.
At least have the guts to support your racist
sorry.
comment.
Hang on.
I'm so sorry.
Let her bring it back.
This is why yesterday's rally was disgusting.
Don't call us
and
Nazis, but I'm going to
outrageous.
threaten the brown guy as a
This is
terrorist
why.
and kill him.
Because I didn't ever say Donald Trump was Hitler. But do you know who stood on a stage yesterday and said, I want to come to the Nazi rally? I don't have to make up words and call you something. You're saying it for yourself. And what you just said
Kamala
right
Harris
here,
is a pimp.
apologize, but I will tell you, I don't accept that apology, and you didn't even say it
That's
to
fine.
me.
I didn't say it
that
to
was
you.
disgusting.
All
And I
right,
can
that's
be
good.
offended.
This is all I can take of it. Thank you. I
Yeah.
don't accept that apology.
Wow, that whole
yeah.
thing went off the rails.
Yeah.
My bad.
I don't think my bad. I'm sorry. I was going to get it done. And then she takes him off the panel. Here she is coming. Abby Veld coming with the explanation as to
We're
what
back
happened.
here, and before we get started, I want to just address what happened in the last segment. First, I want to apologize to Mehdi Hassan for what was said at this table. It was completely unacceptable. When we get this discussion started, you'll see that Ryan is not at the table. There is a line that was crossed there, and it's not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to us at this network.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm sorry. I thought the guy was clearly a jerk, and I completely agree that it was ridiculous. Mark, you are incorrect. The dude totally threatened Mehdi, says Rhonda. Okay, I guess we disagree on this. I thought he was boorish and a-hole and made an a-hole boorish remark. Hassan didn't say, I support Hamas. Hassan said, I support the Palestinian people. So for that reason, I do think the guy was out of bounds. If you just want to kind of talk substantively about sort of the basis for his comment, he was out of bounds. Also, it was a rude, awful thing because it was, it was a serious thing, those explosions going off, the pagers going off. So I agree with that. But, I think the rhetoric that preceded it sort of set the tone. The guy was called a Nazi, and I understand why you feel as though you've got cover to call him a Nazi because he's a supporter of MAGA and of that rally at Madison Square Garden. I just felt, man, remove it. I don't know. It just seemed, the whole thing seemed excessive. The rhetoric itself seemed excessive. Even Hassan's rhetoric. I'm a fan of Don Rickles' version of social commentary, so I'm fine with Mehdi Hassan, Kyle Kalinske, Jank, Mike Malloy, my favorite, and such, says Nicholas. Yeah, thank you for the super chat, Nicholas. I don't know. I think there is a line and there is a time and a place for a lot of this stuff. I mean, you do have to be on some level aware of your surroundings and the context in which you're making so many of these various jokes or comments or remarks. On that one, I felt, I don't know. I just think the whole thing got out of control. And I just felt it was a bit excessive. But he didn't wish death on the guy. I just feel, you know, but again, you know, you interpret these comments any way you want. Let's see. I think I'm being bitched out in the chat. It would have been worse if he'd said, I hope your beeper goes off.
Right. I was just thinking that actually he didn't wish death on him. He said, I hope it doesn't go off, right?
Yeah, that would have been a death wish. But he said he hoped it didn't.
Right.
So the guy could have shrugged and said, we don't use beepers, says Donna. Yeah, that would have been a good comment. Yeah. I love, that's the new insult of the year. I hope your beeper goes off. Yeah, I mean, that really... And again, he said, I hope your beeper doesn't go up. The whole thing was, but I do feel like the guy was bounced inappropriate. You can run your show any way you want, but I mean, I just thought, I think the line Adam said would be joking about someone's death. This is what MAGA has done to this country, desensitized us to this kind of stuff. Yeah. I do believe, and that's kind of the reason I wanted to mention it, I do believe this does reflect the degradation of the dialogue now. The political dialogue in America has degraded so immensely that basically you have on these panels the dressed up name calling, and then ultimately if the panel is going on long enough or the topic is hot enough, you have the edifice of, or artifice maybe, of the politeness going away, and you end up with just what we saw, which is, you know, people insulting each other and becoming offended, and then somebody gets bounced. So I do think there has been a change in the rhetoric around politics in America, and it's not a good thing. It's really not. I mean, there's no sense of decorum. There's no sense of what's appropriate. You can say whatever you want now in a way in which you'll always have an audience for it. So
how would that interview have played out if it happened on, or that round table have played out if it happened on Fox News? I don't think no one would have been removed from the table.
Yeah, probably not. The beeper comment, this is interesting from Gen X Uncle Key. The beeper comment started it. Don't both sides this. Actually, though, I don't think the beeper comment started it, but let me take it two ways. The beeper comment finished it because they decided they were going to go to war over the beeper comment, which was, as I've said already, completely inappropriate. But what started it probably was the Nazi thing. He said, if you don't want to be called a Nazi, then don't talk like a Nazi. That's what he was saying. And he said it a couple of times. So all I'm trying to say is the rhetoric and level of it, that's really the point I'm making, was already being raised to a level of heat that produced that remark. So the beeper comment, I don't think it started it, but I definitely think it finished it. So anyway, that's where, yeah.
This is something I've been thinking a lot about. Trevor, with a 10-10 contribution, says Trump's ego would never let him drop out or not run, but he's doing everything he can to try to lose. And I was thinking about this the other day because he offended Detroiters in Detroit. He offended California victims of wildfire. He called auto workers, jobs, child's play. He's offending Puerto Ricans. It's like he can't not be offensive. And it's almost like he's trying to lose. Why would you say all these things? If the rally script was vetted ahead of time, why would they have let that go?
Yeah. I mean, clearly they're okay with it. There's a level of, a letter of rhetoric that they're allowing, but it's not in some. I've heard this conspiracy theory where Trump's actually trying to lose, and
it just doesn't make any sense.
No, this is who Trump is. He makes these, and his movement is filled with people who talk first and ask questions later. I mean, you can see it, and so look, Trump is struggling, and David Cay Johnston's made this point, struggling for his freedom. He needs to win. Otherwise, he's going to be imprisoned. He knows that. I mean, the legal system is going to come down so hard on him. We've watched him skate. Nothing has stuck to him. That's been the history over the last few years. That won't be the future in the next few years if he doesn't win. So Trump wants to win, but all of these comments and unforced errors and all the rest of it, that's just who he is. It's a chaotic mess. That is what MAGA is. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a devious plan for winning, even if they don't get the vote. And I want to talk to David Cay Johnston about that. All right, smash the like button if you would. Yeah, sorry, I know.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Some people don't agree with me on the Hassan thing. I don't know. I just thought the whole thing was a mess. You can bounce the guy if you want, but I have immense respect for Mehdi Hassan. I think he's a terrific journalist. I mean, there's much. So believe me, I'm not anti-Mehdi Hassan at all. In fact, you've heard me speak very in laudatory terms about him on this show. I just thought the whole thing was it was just a crude, rude situation, and it really didn't offer much. It was all heat and no light. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy makes our Tuesdays so special. He is a best-selling author. He's the co-founder of DCReport.org. And he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. And when it comes to Trump, he is without peer. How about it for the great David Cay Johnston, everyone?
Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. And, Trump's rally has made a lot of news. I want to get later in our conversation into a strategy which you've articulated once before for winning the election, for MAGA to try to get the election, even if they don't get the votes. But right now, I want to just ask you, with the run-up, with just a week out, David, this MSG rally, which was filled with, this vituperative rhetoric and really kind of a lot of gross, nasty, racist stuff, it has carried this narrative, the ripple effect, in the days now that have followed it. I think that is something that could be politically impactful in a negative way for the MAGA people.
I think this is a really good example of the Trump people shooting themselves in the foot. Now, they're trying to distance themselves, particularly from the quote-unquote comedian at the beginning of the show. But it turns out that there were journalists who were allowed to observe how this was all being set up. And they edited his remarks before he got up there to speak. So they left in this disgusting remark about Puerto Rico and some others. So you can't argue that, well, this was rogue, we didn't really mean that. They edited him. They chose to let him say these things. On the other hand, I just spent the last 90 minutes watching various videos of people interviewing people voting for Trump. And the level of ignorance in this country is just appalling. People who cannot explain why they believe what they believe. If you show them, as several people with video cameras did, that, well, that's not true, here's the facts, they go, well, the government said that. You can't believe the government. They just make it all up. People who literally, I watched, at least a dozen different people say that the government had directed the two hurricanes as part of a plot to take people's houses. I'm sorry, someday human beings might control the weather, but it's not happened yet. And a lot of this troubles me because, of course, the whole idea of our democracy under the Constitution is based on Enlightenment era ideas that people would be reasoned and rational. That doesn't mean they might not have very robust debate and yell at each other, but reasoned and rational in the end of the day. And the fact is, huge numbers of Americans simply do not have the intellectual capability to analyze these things.
I don't know that you need these great intellectual abilities. It just seems to me, David, that the base of that Trump voter, the ones that you're talking about that you had seen interviewed, they are responding to something. Is it charisma? You've written so much about this guy. I feel like you can see he has some appeal of some kind. What is it?
Donald has a lot of charisma, Mark. No question about that. Joe Biden, very little. I think the number one overwhelming factor, I've said there's three factors: the fake Christians, the people who hate the civil rights movement, and the economics. But I think the overwhelming factor is that ever since we began Reaganism, the way government spends its money has dramatically changed. And the opportunities for very young people have become much, much less limited. Their pay is nowhere near what it would be if we had kept going before we took apart unions. And, in the peak year that there were unions, about 37% of private sector workers were in unions and 80% of workers benefited because lots of companies would pay union wages or even premium wages to keep the union work rules out. Once that went away, it's been really tough. And then this movement to have your health benefits taken out of your cash pay instead of being on top of your cash pay, that's been devastating. And both parties have a lot of blame here. And once we get past this election, I'm going to be writing a great deal more. I spent an hour this morning with one of the leading economics experts about this. And we don't see things exactly alike. We're in the same ballpark, at least. And that was his view, that the fundamental problem is that we've reordered the way we're running our economy, and it's to subsidize those who are in the top. He would argue, I think, the top 10 or 15%. I would argue the top 5 or less. But it is astonishing how many government devices now take care of people who don't need to be taken care of.
So to follow up on that, then, you're saying those people within that economy you've just described who are essentially left out because of these changes that you've just mentioned, right, they are looking for a savior figure? Is that?
Absolutely. Okay. Donald, in fact, says, I am the only one who can save you. And I've downloaded, I don't know how many images that portray him as either God or a godlike character. And people saying, thank Jesus for sending Donald Trump to save America. And, but there's on the one hand, we've reordered the economy in ways that have been very tough on people who don't have a significant education or skill. On the other hand, I have some trouble with the notion that, the economy is in trouble. I mean, first of all the measures show that we are, as the very sober-minded magazine, The Economist in Britain put it, the envy of the world. No other economy on the planet has recovered the way we did from the pandemic. They haven't had the job growth, the wage growth, the increase in assets. No other country. And we've seen now numerous 3-day weekends where the airlines reported, 100% of their seats essentially were sold. Clearly, a lot of people are doing just fine. Some people are not. That's always true. Some people got rich during the Great Depression, and some people went broke during the economic expansion in the 60s. But on the whole, our economy is really running on 8 cylinders, flat out, very successful. And people who aren't participating in it, I would argue there's 2 things. Either they didn't develop any skills or minimal skills, easily replaceable skills, and they don't appreciate the extent to which government rules are redistributing income upward. That's what my book Free Lunch was about. I mean, Perfectly Legal and Fine Print were about it too, but Free Lunch was about all these subsidies to companies that, literally nobody but the insiders knew about until I wrote it. It's still in print. 16 years after it came out, 17 years after it came out, because it'll explain to you in plain English, how companies use taxpayer money for their new investments instead of their own money in many industries.
Yeah, it's only expanded. Everything that you've talked about, there it is in free lunch. It's only been expanded.
Yeah.
So in the chat, as we return to Trump and sort of his appeal, and there's this. Would like to hear David Cay's thoughts on the 38 million views of Joe Rogan's interview with Trump. Just millions of low information Americans, and sort of this. You get it. It was a little bit of a
yeah. Well, I think
cheeky,
Joe Rogan, who has the #1 podcast in the world, appeals to a lot of people. Not all of them are low income or low education. He appeals to people who have a sort of male dominating view of the world. And he's commercially been very, very successful. I think some of those viewers, after watching the Joe Rogan podcast, probably not many, but some of them were probably turned away from Trump. And what's going on right now in some degree is a double standard here. Donald Trump says crazy things, racist things, threatening things. He talks about suspending parts of the Constitution and using the Justice Department to go after all Democrats, anybody who didn't vote for him, he said. And Kamala Harris is held to this other standard of, as Van Jones put it on CNN the other day, he's lawless and she has to be flawless. This is somebody who has a track record we can look at. She, when the bank said, well, we'll settle with you for cheating California homeowners, we'll give you $5 billion. She got them paid $25 billion. She has a successful track record as Attorney General. When she was a U.S. Senator, she replaced Al Franken as the one senator who asked really smart questions of people up for confirmation. Americans are free next Tuesday to choose to throw away their democracy. That's a right we have. And if people want to throw away their democracy and make us a dictatorship, then they're going to do it. I don't believe that's what's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is that the popular vote will be at least 10 million and maybe 15 million in favor of Kamala Harris. And the Trumpers will immediately say, well, it's obviously rigged because the polls showed we were going to win. And they just stuffed ballot boxes and all the illegals voted and dead people voted. And that there's no basis in truth for that will have nothing to do with the fact that they're going to try and rile people up. And you're exactly correct that Donald knows perfectly well that he's looking at prison. And by the way, I believe Judge Marchand, who's sentencing Donald, I think on the 18th, but it's shortly after the election, he's going to sentence Donald to prison. It's unimaginable that he would not give him a prison sentence. And of course, as I pointed out before, nothing in the Constitution would prevent Donald Trump from serving time as a felon in a state prison and being president of the United States at the same time. Absurd as that is, the founding framers of our Constitution never imagined something like this.
Well, and there's an absurdist notion to the fact that a felon can't vote, but apparently a felon can become president. It's all bizarro. I want to touch on something that was mentioned at this MAGA rally in Madison Square Garden. It's this little secret. He came.
Oh, yes.
He came on. The former president came on. He said, "I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right?" And he said, "Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I," meaning I think Mike Johnson,
Speaker Johnson.
Yeah. "He and I have a little secret. We will tell you what it is when the race is over." And he sort of really did delight in it. It was a weird moment. And Johnson,
I don't think it's a secret what they want to do.
Yeah. You've detailed it once before, but can you just quickly summarize it again, please?
On January 3rd, the next Congress takes office. On January 6th, they certify the vote. Now, if they refuse to certify enough states that no one gets to 270 votes, then the election gets thrown to the House, and each state has one vote. And because when you do it that way, the Republicans have more states than the Democrats, Donald Trump becomes president. Here's the problem with their little secret. if the Democrats take back control of the House, then the Speaker on January 3rd will become Hakeem Jeffries from New York, Nancy Pelosi's #1 acolyte, who she trained very, very thoroughly in how to count votes, how to whip votes, how to bring things forward and get them passed. And it's hard to imagine the Republicans retaining control of the House. The only reason they've had control for the last 2 years is the New York State Democratic Party, in an act of remarkable political malpractice, approved a redistricting map for the state of New York that gave Republicans 5 seats that had been Democratic seats for a long, long time. The candidates that they're running now and the changes that have taken place, I think it's quite clear that the Democrats are going to take back the House, and I think they're going to do it by not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 seats. They're going to have a larger majority than that, in double digits.
So the point is,
seats.
David, you're saying that, and of course they don't need to win in double digits, you're just saying retain, if you get the House, you retain then the right to essentially certify the election.
That's right.
The lack of certification only comes with the dominant party in the House.
And certification, Mark, is what's known as a ministerial act. It's not your job to go and do anything except accept the certifications that each governor has signed and tally them up. This is not a place to start relitigating about the election. Now, if somehow this case gets before the Supreme Court, Supreme Court could do what it did in 2000. They can decide they're going to pick the president, and we know who they would pick. But I think that is unlikely, provided that the Democrats get the vote out. The elections are about who votes.
Because you're saying that SCOTUS is less likely to wade into the pool if there has been such a tremendous voice of the people that's been aired? Is that okay?
Yeah. The members of the Supreme Court, if she wins by 10, 15 million votes, are much less likely to step into this. If the Electoral College vote is 200, to make up numbers, 271 to 269, then I can see them possibly weighing in with some colorable, as lawyers call it, argument that something was improper. But remember, we have Republican election officials all around the country saying there's no cheating going on. And almost all the cases that have been prosecuted for double voting, which is very rare, or voting dead people or voting ineligible people, have been Trumpers. They haven't been Democrats. They've been Trumpers. This is a further one of the many ironies about Donald and what's happening. Let me offer a terrible scenario to you, okay? Assume Donald gets in through the Electoral College or the Supreme Court. I believe at his inaugural, right there on the Capitol, he will do the following things. He will fire Jack Smith on the spot, the prosecutor. He may also order the arrests of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, whom he went after the other day, and many other people, as a way to intimidate people and to make them fall in line. And of course, under this Supreme Court decision, those would be official acts by him and would be unreviewable by any court as long as they're held to be official acts. He will have people rounded up and arrested for various reasons. And, Trump has said many times, going back long before he announced in 2015 his latest, what was then his latest campaign for president, that you shouldn't be allowed to write articles about me that I don't approve. And believe me, he said that to me face to face more than a few times. So he will do everything he can to do what Viktor Orban has done: stop all opposition, shut down the press, arrest. I would not be surprised to see him arrest members of Congress, and he will pardon most or all of the January 6th people, especially now that he refers to January 6th as a day of love.
Yeah, that's just a wild, wild recharacterization of, that even he, the master marketer, seems to be straining with that one. But And just as he called his Madison Square Garden rally a night of love, and he said it was just so much love in the room, and you have this, the sound bites just are voluminous.
Yeah, it was a festival of hate, misogyny. I mean, even the New York Times wrote a headline that I thought was quite strong for the Times about this, and called it misogyny, racism, and hate, and it clearly was speaker after speaker. I mean, calling Kamala Harris the Antichrist.
Right. Come on, David Cay Johnston. You don't really think he'll arrest people?
Oh,
that
no, I
rhetoric
absolutely
is so
think
Russia
he will
propaganda.
have people arrested. Because Donald has said he would do this. Donald has repeatedly said that he wants these people arrested. He has said, he's called various people, including Joe Biden, traitors in speeches in which he has said, and you know what we do with traitors. He's called for military tribunals to try these people. Donald has repeatedly said that he would suspend the Constitution, or in some speeches, parts of the Constitution. Donald intends to be our dictator, and I've been saying that since 2015. July, he announced in June, and I started saying that in July of 2015, 9 years ago.
Molly says, you have a smart household. That my daughter married a Republican and now morphed into a Republican. She feels Kamala Harris couldn't ever be intelligent enough to be president. I love this this thing where,
you got to kind of marvel at that. Here she goes to one of the best law schools in the country in California, and she's a very successful prosecutor in Alameda County, Oakland, as a practical matter, and district attorney in San Francisco. And Donald, doesn't know that Finland is an independent country, doesn't know why there's a memorial at Pearl Harbor. I mean, that's to me the most shocking one of all. And, he claims to be the world's greatest expert on 22 different subjects. Well, first of all, I don't think anybody's the greatest expert on any subject unless there's only 3 experts. And then, you can't be the expert in all of these. And he demonstrates all the time he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then on top of that, look at how it's who are the witnesses against him in the criminal trials? Who are the people saying, don't put him back in the White House? They're Republicans who served in the White House or the agencies. Those are the people we should be paying attention to. 40 out of 44 cabinet members have said he has no business being in the White House. Now, if you believe, and apparently a lot of people do, that journalists and scientists and public servants have spent their whole life plotting to deceive you, and Donald Trump is the beacon of truth, then there's no discussion about this. But then you're just believing that you're demonstrating to the world that you have no judgment and sense about how things happen. Somebody just posted in the chat, and I agree. Kamala Harris is very smart. You can like or dislike her policies, but nobody who knows her, who has dealt with her, including defense lawyers who went against her, judges she practiced before, they all talk about what a sophisticated mind she has.
I definitely think that she'd surround herself. I always think of these things, as coalitions. She'll surround herself with competent people. I think Trump surrounded himself with total incompetence. There was utter chaos. The scientists and doctors who were called upon to evaluate the situation with COVID, they were dismissed. They were played off in PR ways. It was horribly awful, because it's what you have said about Trump and detailed about Trump for so long. He's a PR show. There is no there.
Right. And Donald's complete ignorance about things is on display all the time. He says things that, anyone who finished high school should be able to tell right off the spot are utter and complete nonsense. But we shouldn't miss the message that's going on a higher level here. Our democracy is in very deep trouble. As Mitt Romney said, millions of members of his party, the Republican Party, don't believe in our Constitution and in democracy. And lots of people are upset, and they are, in my view, many of them legitimately upset about the economy. That's why I wrote my 4 economics books, the trilogy plus the anthology. We need to revise the rules of our economy so that we aren't providing the fruits of our economy to people who already have more than enough, and more importantly, allowing them to go through life without paying taxes or paying absolutely minimal taxes. I mean, my wife and I, our tax rate from the federal government last year was 3 times the rate paid by billionaires, according to the latest data the government has put out. 3 times. And the billionaires make in a few hours what we make at the end of an entire year, the two of us.
It's shameful.
That's just nuts. And people are feeling that their future is not looking good. Revolutions occur when large numbers of young men conclude that the unknown future has to be better than the known future. And we don't want to be in that situation. One other thing on a different topic, if I can. There's a very interesting development that's happened in the last 24 hours with Saudi Arabia. They are selling assets to raise money. Their economy, which the New York Times wrote a great, long, detailed piece about maybe 15 years ago about how they were going to be in deep trouble, and they really were at the time, but they were papering it over. They have overspent themselves to the degree that they're in real trouble. And that would be one more destabilizing force in the Middle East. Russia has, run through most of its assets and has been reduced to trading, literally bartering, oranges for lentils sorts of things. And that indicates that there's more economic trouble out there in the world. The Chinese government is trying to paper over all of these bad loans, which they can do, by the way, because like the United States, they have monopoly control of their currency, but there'll be a lot of pain in the process. So economic instability is really a huge issue that's going to get worse going forward until we take the time and the effort to educate people about why we need different policies, policies that are investing in the future, creating better life for people who are not already rich.
And I should just mention in relation to Saudi, and this is in stark contrast to their buddy Donald Trump, they're trying to get away from oil. Even it's an odd thing to say about the Saudis, but their economy is so dependent on oil, they're trying to diversify it. So this is their challenge going into the future. Quickly, a couple of comments, David, and then I'll let you go. I'd almost like to ask this question second. Let me start with this one. Phineas says, please ask David Cay Johnston about Latin and Puerto Rican factor that just occurred, the ripple effect from that rally.
Well, Philadelphia has, I think, the second largest Puerto Rican population in the 48 states. And Puerto Ricans, of course, are Americans and have the right to vote. And to the extent that people in the Puerto Rican community in Philadelphia were supporting Trump, I think that's just taken a very sharp change. I think that this was a really serious, unforced error, shooting the campaign in its foot. And I think that could be enough by itself for Pennsylvania, with its 19 electoral college votes, to go for Kamala Harris.
And then this from No Contendo, David Cay Johnston with 45, lock the borders. Exiting citizen says.
Well, in theory, he could go send troops to the border. Remember, there are fewer people crossing the border now than when Trump was in office. These claims that, bigger and bigger numbers by Donald. One of the ways that he's a liar, it's 2 million, and then it's 10 million, and then it's 15, and now it's 20 million people. And that they're all criminals and they're from 182 countries. So, you want to understand this idea, go see the Ronald Reagan speech when he put forth what amounted to his amnesty plan in his first administration in 1982 when he did this, to provide a path for people who were here in the U.S. to become citizens. My wife oversaw the fund at the California Community Foundation that loaned money to people so they could put up what I think was $800 in fees to qualify to stay in the U.S., which in today's money would be, $1,600, $2,000. And by the way, every single dollar was paid back. Some people were late, but all of the money was repaid. Republicans used to be in favor of immigration, and they didn't operate on this fear that, murderers and rapists, and maybe there's some nice people mixed in there. And there's no discussion going on about why do we have all these people from Honduras coming up here? Because we have helped put in place a situation in Honduras, a country I've been to 3 times this year, and used to own through inheritance, a hacienda in that we had to give away because it was way too dangerous. It's because there are gangs that are so open. People have to hire armed guards to stand in the middle of their street with shotguns. 12-year-old girls get kidnapped and forced into prostitution. 12-year-old boys get kidnapped and forced into armed robberies and executions. That's why parents, took this dangerous journey to come to the U.S. border. Well, why do we have that situation? Well, go back and look at how the U.S. foreign policy worked in Central America for the last 50 years, arguably back to 1954. And you can see why these things happened. We caused them. Neither side, neither the Democrats or Republicans are talking about that and about how to fix it. And we have millions of children around the world, which we've written about at DC Report, who are, for all practical purposes, slaves in the cocoa, that is chocolate plantations, and the coffee plantations. If we paid a dime a cup more for coffee, a dime a cup, and that money went to the coffee growers, there wouldn't be children working in these places. They could pay adults. The economies of those places would be much better off, and fewer people would be feeling desperate and surrounded by criminals to come here. But as long as our politics are, for many people, Kamala Harris, the devil, Donald Trump, savior sent by God, you're not going to discuss the policies that matter and that drive the things that upset us. And we'll see when we get past the election what's going to happen. One more prediction for you, Mark.
What's that?
All of the news coverage has been how close this election is, right? Never than a point. When the votes start getting counted on Tuesday night, and they show that on the popular vote, Kamala Harris is going to get a large margin over Trump. It's not going to be close in the popular vote. Trump and his people are immediately going to say, well, you see, it's all rigged. The polls said I was going to win, and now you can see she's getting all these votes, and that tells you it's a completely rigged election. As long as he doesn't win, it doesn't matter what happens to him. He's going to say it's a rigged election.
Sure.
And there will be some acts of violence. We've seen a number of postal boxes put on fire. Only one case in Vancouver, Washington, does it appear that a lot of ballots were destroyed. The others, they were just sort of singed and damaged. But I anticipate we'll see not organized violence. The prosecution of the January 6th people, I think, has suppressed that as it's supposed to do. That's why you arrest people, to deter other criminal behavior. But, oh yeah, there are going to be some incidents. People menacing people in line to vote.
I was surprised by the setting on fire of these ballots. One of our listeners actually was the one who told me, and I thought, it can't be true. It just seems so.
It's true. There have been about a half a dozen reported incidents.
Yeah. So, of course, the people in Puerto Rico can vote in this election, Gordon. That's what David was just saying before. And I think I'm out of time, but I'll just throw this in, though. David, please speak on BRICS versus the U.S. dollar under Kamala Harris versus 45. The BRICS nations are the Russia, China, Brazil, Iran.
Brazil, Russia, India, China. Well, what we should be worried about is the growing coalition that's being built here by Russia with, Iran, which it had deep enmity for between those two countries for 1,000 years, and we've pushed them into each other's arms. But the Chinese, the Brazilians who now sell most of the soybeans that go to China, not American farmers, some other countries are creating new blocks, political blocks, and those need to be addressed. The U.S. dollar has been very strong. When the U.S. dollar is strong, it's great if you want to go overseas. When we went to New Zealand, we got $1.80 for each dollar. If I drive 90 miles to Canada, I get about $1.35 for each dollar. But that also means people are less likely to buy American-made goods because the cost is high, it's dear. Trump's plan for tariffs and his loose talk about eliminating the income tax are nonsense. Tariffs are not a tax on a foreign country. They're a tax on American consumers, and they will tank our economy real fast if he actually does it. And, you know, one thing about tariffs, Congress has given the president very broad authority to impose tariffs without a vote by Congress. So that's one of the issues to think about. I mean, Kamala Harris has a clearly laid out plan that half the living Nobel Prize winners in America have endorsed, that anybody who's spent much time studying economics should understand is, conventional sort of plan, but it is designed to stimulate the economy and improve the lives of people in the bottom half of the economy. Donald Trump's plan is very simple. Eliminate taxes or further reduce them for the richest people in America. And those are the people who are throwing money at him. Not all of them, but many of them. Here's your chance to choose. We get to choose. That's the whole idea of the United States. We don't have a king to tell us what to do. We choose. And we can choose to replace our democracy with a dictator. And the last question there is, will Trump fade from our media if he loses? Well, once he's in prison and doesn't have access to talking, that will be a big change. And he will, I'm confident he'll be sentenced in the New York case. When the Washington, D.C. case is finally finished, he'll be convicted in that case. The evidence is overwhelming.
And what about the document case, David? Will they dust the document case off?
I think that the document case will get restored after the election by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, because Judge Cannon completely misstated the law. There is no requirement that the Senate confirm a special prosecutor. This has been a well-litigated issue, and she's completely wrong. The hope is that they will remove her from the case, and then that case can go forward. And that's
a damning case, a super damning case.
It's very damning. And Jack Smith's filings stating in hypotheticals, because that's what lawyers do, have for all practical purposes accused Donald Trump of already having sold national security secrets. And I have a column I wrote in August of 2022 at DC Report saying, of course, Donald has sold national security secrets, and here's why and what would happen. I mean, we know that he spoke about national security secrets. We have voice recordings of him doing this. We have other people saying he told us these secrets, because Donald has no moral understanding of why you keep secrets. And if you're the president of the United States, there are going to be many secrets you're going to take to your grave. You're not even going to put them in your memoirs or some future record. You're going to take them to your grave. I have made, as a journalist, commitments about things where nobody's ever going to know about them. They're going to go with me to my grave, because that's the morally right thing to do. If it becomes the right thing to talk about it, I will. Thank you for putting that up. What's the date of that piece on August?
I remember.
I can't read it.
Yeah, I can't either. Tony, maybe you can go in and see the date. It was the 22nd, August 12th, in 2022.
August 12th, 2022. Evidence suggests Trump tried to sell out America for profit. Yeah.
It's a great piece. Maybe we'll link to it at the bottom of this video. I remember reading it, and it was like, duh. I hadn't thought of it before I read your column, but then once I read the column, I thought, of course, yeah, it makes perfect sense. But one thinks it's beyond the pale to sell that information to America's adversaries. That's why you don't make that connection as an American.
Yeah, but to Donald, that's not how he thinks. Having known him for 36 years and studied his whole life, Donald doesn't think the way the rest of us think. His thought process is, if he does it, it's right. If he says it, that's the truth. That all that matters is getting the money. He's argued he had a right as president to take all these documents. He explicitly does not. The Presidential Records Act doesn't say what he claims it does. And we know, I am, based on the filings by Jack Smith alone, forget other things that I know about, it's very clear that we have intercepted communications from the other side, where he's talking to Vladimir Putin, for example, and we're listening in on Putin. that our intelligence agencies know about things that Donald Trump has done that compromised our national security. And they're not going to make that public because the national security interests exceed the criminal interests, which is the standard way these things go. We still have secrets, I'm told, from World War I that are under lock and seal. We have lots of secrets from World War II that are under lock and seal, even though essentially everybody from who was involved in World War II, especially in any leadership role, they're dead.
Sure.
The only people left around from World War II were, 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds who lied to get into the Army or the Navy. The leadership corps, they're all gone. We're not going to release those secrets in my grandchildren's lifetimes.
Wow, it's just wild. That's a conversation I'd love to have with you for another time. Yeah, how they decide what those time frames should be and what documents. We've even talked about overclassification. That was the first line of defense when Trump was found with all those documents. Well, they overclassify, and the punditry was trying to kind of spin it for him that way. But he has so many, and it's inexplicable, and he moved them. After saying he had surrendered them all, he moved them. He literally hid them. He had them hidden actively from investigators. So for that reason, I'd love to see that case come back. David,
so we know Donald's character. What we're going to discover next week is the character of the American people. That's what's really the issue in this election, is the character of the American people.
That's what worries me, David.
Well, it worries me too.
We will still have a conversation with you, at least we're planning, next Tuesday, election day.
Yes, I will. I may only be on audio because I'm in Washington, D.C. doing overseas television Monday night and Tuesday night.
And then, we have a special election night. I'll just mention it. We have people looking in. We have an election night hour planned from, it would be 8:30 on the West Coast, 8:30 to 9:30 Pacific time. So it's 11:30 to 12:30 in the East. Is that right?
If I can get a join in, I will.
Yeah, that'd be great. In any case, love our time together. David Cay Johnston, everyone. Thanks, David. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I do have some super chats to get to, and I want to get to them.
First, I need to fact check you.
What's that?
Someone heard you say, I think Teacher Lori in the chat said you mentioned that Puerto Ricans can vote in the presidential election. Yeah. Indeed, they cannot.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
According to the information that I have found today, there are more than 3 million Puerto Ricans on the island. They will not be able to vote for president. They do get to help choose the presidential party nominee in the primaries, but as far as the election, the presidential election, if you live in Puerto Rico on the island, you cannot vote in the presidential election.
Thank you for that.
Puerto Rico does not have electoral votes either.
Well, I know they didn't have electoral votes, but
my bad. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about that. I really thought that they did. They're a commonwealth. Apparently, they do not.
Yeah.
Wow.
But if they are living on the mainland here in America, they can vote. If
I see.
Here. Yeah.
Oh, it's because of I see. It's because of their residency, but I mean that's it. They're all, we know they're Americans, but wow. I mean, yet another way in which the system is broken. It's just, I mean, we know Puerto Rico and Washington D.C. should be states. They should have statehood. They should have voting rights like states, and the only reason they don't is because of politics. But I must confess, I thought even though they don't have voting rights as states, and they don't have statehood, that they could vote in the presidential election. But as it turns out, they can only vote in the primaries. So, thank you for that.
It's nonsensical. If you can vote for one, why wouldn't you be able to vote in both?
Yeah, it's weird. But,
I stand corrected.
Yes, thank you. I stand corrected. On AOC, Osbjorn says, AOC for president in 2032, progressive altruistic future for the world, a brighter future for my kids. We love America. Best wishes from Norway. Yeah, thank you for that. AOC's got some interesting political days ahead because she has tacked toward the center, I'd suggest to you. She used to be like a true progressive. Now I'd say she's realized that sometimes the progressive agenda, if maintained too militantly, can cost you politically, and I'd say she's kind of changed the flavor of her politics a bit. Very interesting, though. She's definitely an important political figure and political voice in America. No Contendo says, I called it out weeks ago regarding Haitians and the lack of support from descendants of slavery, knowing full well Caribbean and Black Americans are blood tied. You see how the GOP backpedals after kicking Puerto Ricans and Latinos. The GOP knows Latinos vote in force.
Good job deciphering that. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. No Contendo speaks in abbreviations, so I have a little trouble sometimes. But I do think that you're right. They see the damage that they do. And thank you for the $20 super chat. I think that GOP does insult first, ask questions later, and sadly, that leaves a lot of people insulted. And it also creates a hostility that's just not necessary. And then when they backpedal, you don't really undo that damage. Nicolaus says, can we lock Fatty Bannon, Ehrman Goering back in Spandau prison again? I used to drive everyone at the roulette table crazy, chain smoking really bad Penn cigars. No dealer wanted to be anywhere near me. Can't imagine why. Well, when I think of really smelly, bad Penn cigars, I do think of Steve Bannon, whose release was today. Yeah, can we lock him back up again? Good question. I mean,
he does have another criminal case coming up. That is in the state of New York, where apparently he was allegedly taking money for the wall, but then putting it in his own pocket. Remember that?
Well, he was pardoned for that, wasn't he?
No, that case is pending in the state of New York, and the trial is set for December.
So that's the federal side he was pardoned on, because that was the thing that Trump pardoned him on. So he's already been found guilty. The case that Kim is talking about is the one that he pursued, that is to say, the plan with one other guy. And they went on and they said, every dollar of your donation will go to building the wall. It was about the wall. Mm-hmm. And of course, no dollar went to building the wall. It was all going to building Steve Bannon and his partner's wealth. So he was found guilty on that. And I believe, and I mean, again, you should Google it and check it. But the federal case was settled, but Trump did pardon him on it, was my understanding. Trevor Starr says, my daughter's 19 and will also be voting for the first time. I'm so glad and proud that she'll be to be able to vote for the first female president. There it is. There's a little bounce in the step of a Democrat. Randy says, I believe the entire Trump strategy is to somehow get the election into the House of Representatives, which probably means Trump is declared the winner. Yeah, we've talked about that today, and I think that you're right, that was the strategy, or is the strategy. But as David has detailed, as we referenced, if you don't retain the House, then you don't really have that option anymore. So throwing it to the House, if you don't control the House, may be hard. However, to be fair, I mean, if neither side reaches 270 because of any number of things that could throw sand into the gears of the election, then you do find yourself oddly beholden to the outcome of that House vote, regardless of who's in control. I do agree that the word Nazi is being used too much. However, so are communist and socialist. I grew up in a social democracy, Denmark. The U.S. is not a socialist country, nor even close to communist. Thank you, Hane. And of course, you're right, Hane. We throw these comments around. I mentioned this, I believe, just yesterday. The idea that Kamala Harris is a communist or a Marxist, or that, we see these in the chat as well. It's ridiculous. These are people who know nothing about communism or Marxism, nothing about it. I mean, so I think your take is right on. Thank you, William Geip, for a super sticker and a big shout out.
Big shout out.
George Carlin said it in one sentence. It's a big club and you ain't in it. You and I ain't in it. Talking about billionaires and their control of the economics of America. 45 hates educated black people. Obama, Kamala Harris, etc. Insecure. Yeah, he really is tough on minorities. I'm starting to think he really doesn't like minorities. And here's Teacher Lori correcting me on, did Mark just say people in Puerto Rico can vote? They cannot vote, nor does Puerto Rico have electoral votes. Yes, thank you for correcting me. I did.
I misspoke.
I did misspeak. Here's the orange grandpa, famous for his sincere apologies. And so Trump's Sunday hate rally at the Madison Square Garden offended Puerto Ricans. Welcome to the club, amigos. He's been offending Mexicans, Muslims, and Haitians since day one. I think we may have read that, but there you go. And finally, Luis, who is feeling it because the Dodgers are cruising in that World Series. Luis says, restrict voting, inequitable wealth distribution, ruled by the minority. I've seen this MAGA playbook before. Make apartheid great again, is Luis's take. It's a pretty brutal crew, the MAGA crew, but they have tremendous momentum. I think a lot of it is related to charisma on the stump. It's also related to this sense of an electorate and generally a population that feels left out, right? Left out of this sort of aspirational aspects of being an American, owning a home, all of these things that are associated with, living large. Social media doesn't help. You're siloed inside a social media world that feeds you a lot of negative stuff about the other side. It is designed to do that. It's the way to keep you most connected to whatever social media platform. All the documentaries, all the writings, they all point to that methodology. So when you are being fed that constantly, it does tend to rot you to the core in terms of your evaluation of facts. You see all facts through that prism to the extent that you can even see facts. It's a scary time for sure. So, Rich says, evil does not live in ideas. Evil lives in the human heart. Both communism and fascism can only lay their failures at the feet of corrupted and incompetent individuals. Rich writes like he's writing a screenplay. I like that. I mean, you're right about, I didn't mean to swallow the last part. Communism and fascism can only lay their failures at the feet of corrupted and incompetent individuals. I mean, it's true, but you need buy-in, you need sufficient buy-in. But Rich does write, evil does live in ideas. Evil does not live in ideas, lives in the human heart. I saw when evil lives in the human heart, it just felt very literary to me. Evil lives in the human heart. Good job, Rich. Yeah. I feel like Rich weaves his words. He's a word weaver. Not like Trump weaves. Trump was talking about his weave on Rogan. He says, I talk for 3.5 hours because I'm weaving stories and...
It's the best weave, he said. There's no one else with a weave like my weave.
He may
I've never seen anything like it.
He made it all seem as though like it was all a plan. Anyway, now, what do we have left? Because I've spent a lot of time on, look, this is the ramp up to the election. I do want to mention, and I just mentioned it before with David, but I want to mention it now.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On Tuesday night, we will be going on with an election special. It's going to...
What?
I know. It's very big. It's our big election special. It'll be 8:30 to 9:30 Pacific time. So that's 11:30 to 12:30 in the East. And by then, we may have a sense of something. Typically, what you'll find on election night, as you know, is you'll find a lot of, depending on early voting, and we'll have to see these early voting numbers. Typically, you'll see a lot of Democrats voting early, but you'll also see the election day numbers reflecting same-day voting, which is the red mirage that they talk about. That's when you'll have a large number of GOP voters who vote on election day, making it look like Trump's way ahead. And then you see increasingly mail-in ballots and absentee ballots, oftentimes and frequently, at least in the past, reflecting Democratic support, surging for Harris. That's why, and it allows people like Trump to say, hey, what happened? I was ahead, and now I'm not. They're monkeying with our election outcome. That's what he tried before, and that's that whole red mirage and blue wave thing. This year may be different. This year you have a lot more in the way of GOP mail-in ballots. They've kind of changed their rhythm. We'll have to really see what's ahead on election night, but we'll see it together at least for an hour. Rothman's coming through. Gil Gross is coming through. David Katz is coming through. David Cay Johnston may be through. Michael Shore we're trying to get through. And so we're going to try to get all of our regulars to at least come through for a short time. And I don't know that we're going to have anything at all. As PT says, by 9:30, you'll have a bunch of meaningful nothing. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe now we don't need PT to come through because PT has already come through with that. But we'll see. I do have to be at KFI Radio, so I have some Southern California broadcast obligations, but I will run to the studio so we can get that going. And I'm also going to make this point. The reason we're doing it is because the audience asked for it, okay? So I'm not doing it because I think we're going to know much at that time. I don't think we will. The polls will just have closed on the West Coast. But the audience said, isn't there a way that we can do something on election night? And we really want something. We want this community to come together on election night, and we can watch some of the coverage together, and that's the plan. So, again, that's the reason this is happening, because you wanted it. Enough of you wanted it that we felt we should do it as a sort of in allegiance to the audience. I mean, to something that the audience wanted. I'm absolutely sick that this is even a remotely close election. So ashamed of our loss of sense of self as a country, says Natalie. Natalie, I couldn't agree more. It's a sad place we're in, but we're here. So, teacher Lori, she is says, I think I may be boycotting all media on election night because of the stress with no results. May just queue up a bunch of stuff to stream and avoid election coverage. Well, there you go. Well, then this would not be the place for you, teacher. We'll miss you, but we will definitely, and of course, we will be fueled by Coachella Valley Coffee. Yes.
Speaking of which, we didn't do news today, so we should make sure that people know they can get 10% off at Coachella Valley Coffee.
Ah.
Yeah, it's the Mark Thompson Show exclusive discount.
Sure it is.
This is worth splurging on.
Mhm.
Such good coffee, such good tea. And it is in California. It is all hand roasted, and you can get your Mark Thompson Show discount at checkout. You just enter Mark T all together and see that 10% fly off your total.
Oh, I love it. Best coffee on earth. Also, their tea is terrific. And I think it's a must stop. All organic and from women-owned farms across the world. They get seed money from Coachella Valley Coffee. It's all fresh crops. So all of these beans are the new crop. There's a big difference because you go across the internet and in grocery stores, often you can find discounted beans that are a lot cheaper. Yeah, no kidding. That's generally not new crop, fresh crop. That is stuff that's been sitting around. They discount the beans because they're months old, and now you're getting beans that are just not as good. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It's all fresh. It is hand roasted. They hand roast every bag, and they're tasting notes about each and every bit of coffee. I definitely would check them out, and please use our discount code when you do. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The discount code is MARK-T, altogether, MARK-T, 10% off at checkout. Bravo. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm just looking at the chat, and I will deal with the chat. Weren't we going to do a thing where we have a time we read the chat? Where was that?
You kind of just did.
Okay, good. All right. I'm all in on the fresh beans, says, yeah, right on. Digital Indra. Digital Indra is all in on the fresh beans. I love the fresh beans. Ooh, yes. Fresh, fresh, fresh. Now, before we leave you, I guess we have to leave here in a second. Gosh, that's just crazy.
I know, it's a bummer. You want to add a third hour? We can add a third. We can.
No, I cannot add.
You seem to be going more and more this way.
I had a Law and Disorder I wanted to get to.
No.
I feel like
we'll have to push it to tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah, but tomorrow, who do we have tomorrow?
Tomorrow we have John Rothman.
Yeah, that's right.
And we may have Belinda as well, Belinda Weymouth, our eco-journalist.
Well, with Steve Bannon out now, I just, there's got to be a bounce in your step, everybody. Steve Bannon, the face of the MAGA movement. Pretty exciting. He was, remember, he's jailed because he wouldn't give the January 6th committee documents and information they wanted, okay? So he denied that subpoena. So he goes to federal prison, and I guess he's teaching some kind of social studies class and history class. Of course, it's his history, all right? Now, it's not exactly, an objective take on history.
He called it civics, but it was MAGA civics.
Yeah, exactly. Here's he looked at it as an opportunity to enlist more supporters. A minimum security prison in Danbury, Connecticut. I mean, Danbury, Connecticut is this rich area. He walked out of the federal lockup, and who picked him up? His daughter, Maureen. Yeah. 120 days in the joint. And now he's going over to his podcast. Now, Tony, before we leave, you did go over and listen a little bit to Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, his first fresh offering since he's been released from the joint. What can you tell us, Tony?
I don't even know if it was him because I don't know what his voice sounds like. I don't know if he had co-hosts. I couldn't make any sense out of it. I really tried.
All right. That was a report from Tony, everyone.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, all right. Well done. Well done. There should be more reporting like that. Honest reporting. That's what we give you here on this show. My God. Well, I don't know what more to say, so whenever
The Mark Thompson Show.
Don't know what more to say, I have to just wrap up.
Hey, something to watch for, though, today is that Kamala Harris is going to be at the Ellipse. 20,000 people expected to show up in D.C. to hear her speak today.
She is, and the Ellipse is the part of Washington near the Washington Monument, near the Capitol. It is the part of Washington where the MAGA rally started that then turned into January 6th, so that there is a weird literary, political similarity, deliberate, obviously, eeriness to this rally today. Boy, in the face of all of that chaotic, racist mess that is Trump, you've got Harris trying to cut through the noise. We'll see how it all works out. Tomorrow, Rothman joins.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Also, Belinda and more. Thank you, everyone.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Good show with David and all of you. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.